Morning. Morning, President Shelton, Secretary Woods, Regional Vice Presidents, GEB members, international staff, delegates, and guests. Welcome to the 41st International Constitutional Convention. Let me start by saying what I've said in the past two conventions. Organizing has always been and will continue to be the life and blood of the labor movement. Since the 1800s, this international union has made organizing its top priority. Over the past 146 years, the BCTGM has evolved with changing industries and employers, fluctuating labor laws, and shifting demographics. And through it all, we have expanded our membership, grown our union density, and given non-union workers a voice at work. It is that tradition of organizing that we continue here today. It is our duty as leaders, officers, stewards, members, and activists of the BCTGM to be actively involved in organizing so this union will be around for another 150 years. As organizers, we are truly on the front lines in the battle against unfair, unreasonable, and unjust employers. A year and a half after we adjourned our last constitutional convention, COVID-19 reached North America. Amazingly, the pandemic presented more organizing opportunities in our industry than we had seen in a long time. It's bad enough working in a non-union factory, but add COVID into the equation and it gets a lot worse. So not surprisingly, a lot of people started reaching out to us. Initially, it was a real challenge trying to run a normal organizing campaign. This was my first time organizing during a worldwide pandemic. It was like trying to organize during a zombie apocalypse. As you know, as organizers, primary tool is face-to-face, one-on-one interaction with potential members. Organizing is all about communicating and educating workers. This, of course, became a big problem. Holding meetings and doing house calls became impossible due to the pandemic. However, we are the BCTGM, and this is our union, our future, our fight, and we have the most creative officers, staff, and members in the entire labor movement. We all come from trouble, so no pandemic was going to stop us from helping workers gain dignity, justice, and respect on the job. Under President Shelton's watch, the entire international staff in every department and all over the two countries worked closely together using new, more efficient ways to communicate. We utilized all the new technology we could get our hands on, from Facebook, Twitter, text blasting, Zoom meetings. Even us old-timers picked up pretty quickly. While we were figuring out ways around this environment of organizing, the US and Canada governments were doing the same. With so many angry workers wanting to join unions, our government had to come up with the safest way to conduct an election. Thus, the mail-out ballot election was the alternative. This gave us great opportunities. Over the past 2 years, or 2.5 years, only 40 to 65% of eligible voters actually mail their ballots in on time for the NRB to count. In fact, most no voters will not even take the time to even vote because they're not as enthusiastic as the yes voters. In 2020 and 2021, we won 60% of our mail-out ballot elections. Yeah, that's a pretty good rate. I've been involved in organizing with the BCTGM for more than 3 decades, and I can tell you, our problem isn't winning elections. The problem is not having enough of them. On average, about 7 or 8 BCTGM local unions out of more than 150 actively participate in organizing and run elections both in the United States and Canada. We need that number to grow immensely if we want this great union to thrive and survive. Brothers and sisters, there are tens of thousands of workers in our industry that are working without a union contract, and it is our duty to help them organize and get the best contract possible. And that means everyone in this room must play an important role. One of the biggest challenges we face in both Canada and the United States is crummy labor laws and bad enforcement of the books on the table. For example, here in the US, more and more unions are filing petitions for election. So many that the board staff cannot keep up. There's not enough staff to hold these elections. Then there's not enough staff to handle all the charges filed against the employers for breaking the law during these campaigns. Heck, just look at Starbucks. Over 200 stores have been organized and thousands of ULPs have been filed, unfair labor practices. More and more elections are being scheduled. And guess what? Funding at the NLRB has dropped. Let me read a quote from the current National Labor Relations Board's General Counsel. The NLRB is processing the most cases it has seen in years, with the lowest staffing levels in the past 6 decades. Our dedicated staff, especially in the 48 field offices, are handling unsustainable caseloads. The agency urgently needs more resources to process petitions, conduct elections, investigate unfair labor practice, and obtain full remedies for workers whose labor rights have been violated. The same trends are happening in Canada, especially in large provinces like Quebec, Ontario, and British Columbia. If Starbucks, Tim Horton, and Canadian Tire organizing really gets going, their system will become overwhelmed just as the US. The next challenge facing organizers is a set of outdated labor laws that do not truly protect workers who want to join a union. This is true for both countries. We need to finally fix our broken labor laws. Later this morning, we'll be looking at the need for labor law reform. Here in the US, it starts with the US Senate passing the PRO Act. The PRO Act stands for Protecting the Right to Organizing Act. As I said, we will go into more details about this a little later. I said earlier that we have to get creative to win today's pro-employer environment. Let me tell you how we've done a few things over the past 4 years. Let's first look at Danone, makers of Dannon yogurt in North America. In 2019, Harry Kaiser, Matt Clark, and I joined Ron Oswald from the IUF and negotiated one of the best neutrality agreements in all the labor movement. A neutrality agreement is between a union or unions and an employer that basically states that an employer will remain neutral during an organizing drive and will not conduct any type of anti-union campaign. So why did we need this agreement? At the time, Dannon plants were mostly organized by us, and the Teamsters had one plant. The reason is because Danone had recently purchased a dozen dairy facilities owned by White Wave, and the majority of them were non-union. So all 3 unions, the USCW, the Teamsters, and us, sat down with Danone's European leaders and worked out a neutrality agreement. Basically, this agreement provides that the company will remain neutral, that the union will have access to the property for 2 weeks if they receive 30% interest, and rather than go through an NLRB election, the 2 sides agree to have a third-party arbitrator. We went to work immediately. With Local 19 in Cleveland, Ohio, we went out to Danone's new plant in Du Bois, Pennsylvania. By the end of 2019, we collected a majority of authorization cards and were permitted on the property in February 2020. The vote was scheduled for leap year, February 29th, 2020. The workers won their election, 93 yes votes to 33 no votes. The beauty of the neutrality agreement is that it's quick, it's fast, and it's fair. And it essentially guarantees our first contract, which Local 19 negotiated. Can you imagine if more and more employers took this approach? We could triple our union density and rate in a matter of years. Before the ink even dried in the Du Bois contract, we directed our attention to another East Coast Danone facility in Bridgeton, New Jersey. The campaign was challenging because the pandemic was in full swing. We just needed get a little bit more creative. In May of 2020, Local 6 retiree Kevin Looney was hired at the Bridgeton plant to help us salt the facility. For those of you who are not familiar with salting, it's when an organizer gets hired in the plant strictly to organize the workers. Kevin helped us doing this in Bridgeton plant. By August of 2020, we had the requisite amount of cards to request access to the company's property and to set up an election. However, due to the extremely high outbreak in COVID-19, the company refused to let us on the premises. This is a European company, and they were taking every precaution they possibly could because of the pandemic. So we reached a compromise. The company knew about Kevin Looney, and they knew he was working for the union, but rather than fire him, the company agreed to give him an office so workers could ask him questions about the union. Basically, that was our access to the plant. In late October, Danone workers in Bridgeton won their election, 59 yes to 16 no. With the neutrality agreement in place, we won 2 organizing victories with Danone. That's pretty impressive right off the bat, right? There's only one non-union Danone facility left in the United States, and that's in Salt Lake City, Utah. We consider this plant to be the sister plant of the Danone's West Jordan plant, which is represented by BCTGM Local 401. I am both happy and proud to announce that Local 401 has more than a majority of these workers signed up, and they're ready to go to election once we conclude this convention. Neutrality agreements are a powerful tool in organizing. So too are recognition agreements. We should be pushing for recognition agreements with every employer we have a collective bargaining agreement with today. Basically, a recognition agreement is when an employer agrees to recognize a union at any new facility it opens, builds, or buys. For example, about a third of the membership that we have is in the retail sector, especially on the West Coast and the Midwest. Those local unions have recognition agreements with several retail chains, such as Safeway and Giant, that automatically puts our retail bakers into the locals whenever they build a new store. It's simple, and it's effective, and it's fair. Local 6 out of Philadelphia continues to do the right thing by demanding recognition with any employer who opens a new facility. Because of Local 6's union density with our largest employer, Bimbo Bakery, and the relationship Hank McKay and the other officers forged with the Bimbo management, they're picking up hundreds of new members via recognition. During the pandemic, demand was so high for Bimbo products, the company had to reverse its decision in 2020 about closing a bakery in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. Local 6 and Bimbo signed an agreement to reopen the plant temporarily and start workers out with full health care at zero cost and $25 an hour. In 2021, Bimbo opened up one of the largest distribution centers in the Northeast. While other unions were wanting in on the action, Local 6 officer Hank McKay pressured BBU management to give recognition to BCTGM, and they did. And again, because of Local 6's union density, their relationship with the company, and their quick request for recognition, they not only got the distribution center, but this year the company decided to reopen the Hazleton Bakery for good. They signed off on a fantastic agreement with Local 6 represents all the employees wall to wall. It doesn't matter how big or small the unit is, they need representation, and we should be there and demand it. For example, international organizer and business agent Andrew Gutierrez found out Bimbo had a couple of loaders working on a separate depot from the bakery in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Andrew spoke with these 2 loaders and signed them up. Rather than filing a petition for an election with the NRB, we went right to Bimbo and demanded recognition. Not only demanded recognition, but they demanded recognition be established in the current bargaining unit in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This may have only been a few new members, but every local organized just a few more people each year, we could grow this union very quickly. But as I said earlier, we need to take some responsibility for this, all of us. From the middle of 2020 until the end of 2021, the NRB conducted nothing but mail-out ballots. And as much as we were successful with mail-out ballots, the delay has hurt us on a few of the campaigns. Our first mail-out ballot was an election in Worthington, Indiana, with about 30 mill workers at Bungie, Inc. I personally filed the petition for Local 280 in May of 2020, but they didn't count the votes until Labor Day. Companies hate the mail-out ballot. They fought each and every petition we filed requesting the mail-out ballot. The company at Bungie delayed the election as much as possible, but Local 280, with the assistance of International Representative Jason Davis and organizer Jason Thomas, won the election. Of course, the company didn't take this lying down. They attempted to get a stay during the campaign, but they failed. They filed a half a dozen objections to the election. Hell, if nothing else, this gave our staff training and practice with litigating all sorts of frivolous objections. I assisted Jason Davis in preparing for a case on the objections. And just like Perry Mason, Jason kicked the shit out of all the lawyers' asses. I'm happy also to report Jason Thomas made sure every employee became a member of Local 280 in that right to work state. And Jason Davis, along with Local 280 officer Earl Ferris, negotiated the highest wage increases those employees ever seen. In 2020, we filed a petition to represent workers at Hearthside Food Solutions in Macomb, Ohio. We'll talk more in detail about Hearthside later this morning, so I'll be brief for now. By August of 2020, we had collected over 700 authorization cards and filed for an election. This was our third attempt at trying to organize these workers. Hearthside Foods is the largest co-packing company in the world with 40 facilities in the United States alone. The companies are producing everything our members make at Nabisco, Kellogg's, and General Mills. During the organizing drive in 2020, the company spent over $1.5 million on union busters alone. Although the petition was filed the first week of August 2020, the ballots weren't counted until December 3rd, 2020. Again, these delays kill us. About 65% of the ballots came in on time, but unfortunately the workers lost. But it was the closest we ever came to winning. If only 51 people would have voted yes instead of no, those 1,300 people would be in the BCTGM today. Every vote counts. While a Hearthside food campaign was going on, Local 149 officer Latita Malone had a majority of 300 workers signed up at Blue City Brewing in Memphis, Tennessee. Due to the pandemic, meeting with workers became a real issue. Plus, the Memphis police were also stopping us from hand-building the plant. We had several obstacles to overcome before moving forward with BBC, including another union possibly raiding us. We also discovered the unit was over 500 people. Vice President Zach Townsend brought in his new and very talented organizers, Darrell Copeland and Jason Thomas. Because house calling and direct face-to-face meeting was just about impossible, Darrell and Jason had to rely on other methods of communication. They developed great leaflets that were text blasted to every single worker in the unit. In fact, they even developed an animated cartoon on how to properly fill the ballot out and mail it back to the NRB. Really impressive. This was another election that we filed around Labor Day, but the ballots weren't counted until December. Although we really couldn't meet in person, you could see the excitement and enthusiasm from the workers. Although less than 50% of the workers got their ballots in on time to be counted, there was enough for Local 149 to be certified as a new representative of more than 700 employees. Latita and Zach didn't stop at winning the election. With the help of Randy Falk, Zach Townsend, and Latita Malone successfully negotiated a great first contract that even included a new union office inside Blue City Brewery, where Latita and the stewards can meet and sign up new employees as soon as they're hired. You'll hear from Latita a little later this morning. As the pandemic began to slow down, our brothers and sisters in Canada were pounding the streets, signing up workers too. Just as in the United States, workers there were upset over the way they were being treated during the pandemic and were looking for the protection and security of a union contract. Canada had its best year in 2021, as International Representative Sylvain Gagne worked with Locals 480, 261T, and Local 55 in winning 4 organizing drives, bringing hundreds of new members. Local 26, under the leadership of Cliff Horton, recognized the importance of organizing. After the last convention, Cliff hired Nick Holtstetter as a full-time organizer. Nick went right to work checking out targets throughout Colorado. Last year, Nick met with workers at Spruce Confections, a unit made up of drivers, production employees, maintenance, including bakers and baristas, just like Starbucks. Cliff and Nick inoculated the committee on what the union busters will likely say and do during the campaign. On December 6, 2021, the Spruce workers won their election by a margin of 3-1. Let's not stop there. Can we give an applause to all those local unions that are out there organizing? Quebec and New Brunswick have the best labor laws in North America. I'll be working with Vice President Ron Piercy on ways we can capitalize on organizing in these two provinces. In the meantime, we need to fight for labor law reform in other provinces and the U.S. Later this morning, you'll hear from Ron and Sylvain. Brothers and sisters, hopefully you all understand how important it is for each and every local to organize. It's not an exaggeration to say that our very survival of our union depends on it. Plants close, plants move, products become obsolete. If we do not organize, we will see our local unions disappear. It may sound like bleak, but it's true. Do we not want another generation of workers to know the value of solidarity with the BCGM contract? Do we not want to fight back against these large multinational companies that think they control us? Do we not want to grow our local unions to be a powerhouse in the communities? Do we not want to be leaders in the labor movement? As I look out over this convention hall, I know we have the right people here to do it. We have smart enough, we work hard enough, we know how to communicate with our fellow workers. We just have to get out and do it. Thank you.
Hold out, so why say union? You say now, union.